Discover the incredible wedding gift that transformed her life at 19, shocking the entire town. Emily Thompson had always felt invisible. On this day, as her grandmother prepared to marry a man who felt completely out of their small Kentucky town storytelling, she stood off to the side, unacknowledged yet profoundly aware of the warmth that a wedding brings. When the ceremony ended, her grandmother presented her with a beautifully bound family journal, its aged leather cover enigmatic and inviting. "Open it when you're ready," she said, her eyes twinkling. With the wedding shoes tucked away, Emily eased herself into the quiet corner of her childhood room, her pulse racing out of both anxiety and excitement. As she flipped through the pages, a tapestry of dreams unfolded before her, each entry belonging to remarkable women in her lineage, not merely housewives but artists and innovators, whose talents were buried beneath generations of societal expectations. What was it like to be more than just a name, more than a shadow in the background? A surge of longing coursed through her. Art had always hummed beneath her skin, a quiet whisper she often ignored in favor of studying, of meeting expectations. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "Girls like you don't waste time on dreams." The ache of belonging coiled tightly in her chest. The journal called to her, yet a part of her still wrestled with the fear of the fallout it might cause. What if she dared to embrace art as her grandmother's ancestors had? Would she be defying not just her father's wishes, but a generation of tradition? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The local art competition loomed ahead, a glittering chance but also a battleground. Could she venture out into a world where her father's ambitions for her clashed with her own? Each stroke, she imagined, felt like an act of rebellion. But as days passed, she discovered betrayal when her old friend Sarah whispered about her intentions, attempting to drown Emily's spark in mud and accusation. Heart racing, Emily felt her confidence unravel. Could she truly stand against the undercurrents of doubt swirling around her as whispers began to rise? The days drew closer to the competition, and Emily felt the weight of her ancestors' dreams press against her shoulders, almost suffocating her. Each failed attempt to work through her fear only intensified the turmoil within. Was she destined to embrace failure as they had? Or could she confront the shadows of expectation that loomed large, waiting for her to step away from the familiar? In that moment of utter anguish, the stakes escalated. Secrets of her past became entangled with her desires. As she stood at the precipice, the now or never moment, Emily faced the truth of her lineage, her identity, and the suffocating expectations that had tried to trap her. And in the face-off against betrayal, she knew she would have to summon every ounce of courage she possessed to step forward into the light. Would she rise, or would she fall amidst the shadows cast by those who couldn't understand? The town was watching, waiting for her to uncover her true self. Emily stood in her dimly lit room, the journal cradled in her lap like a talisman, the weight of generations pressing her to take action. The entries she had encountered illustrated dreams that were not fully realized, reflections of women who had dared to break free, only to succumb to the weight of societal norms and family expectations. Anguish mingled with determination as she traced her fingers over the fine lines of the leather cover, feeling something awakening within her. The art competition drew closer, each passing moment menacing in its inevitability. Emily had played it safe for so long, adhering to her father's definition of success, but staring at the journal felt like a spark lighting a fuse. Each woman's success story within its pages screamed for her to explore who she could be, not who she was expected to become. Hell, the mere act of holding the journal felt like a declaration of independence. But as she picked up her paintbrush one evening, doubts flooded over her like an unseen tide. What if they laughed? What if the whispers turned into venomous shouts? Her father's admonishments echoed relentlessly, words shaped by fear and tradition. The paintbrush hovered just above the canvas, trembling. This wasn't just painting. It was a confrontation between two worlds, one that sought to suffocate her dreams and another that urged her to soar. In that crucible of tension, Emily thought of Sarah. Was she a friend or just another link in the chain binding her to the expectation she loathed? A nervous energy buzzed around her, a feeling that both electrified and terrified her. With a sudden rush of self-assertion, she plunged her brush onto the canvas, unleashing a storm of colors. Each stroke felt like an outing, a radical departure from the girl who had lived in the shadows of her own life. The initial chaos of colors transformed into an image that resonated with the stories of those who came before her. She could see their faces in the swirls, the yearning, the struggle, the fragile moments of victory. With each layer applied, she felt her own identity begin to solidify. In that sacred space, she confronted her fears, the quiet voice of her father now drowned out by a more powerful call, the call of her own spirit. But as the image began to reveal itself, she noticed subtle imperfections. The voice of self-doubt crept back in, prickling at her satisfaction. Was she interpreting her lineage accurately? Did she have the right to express herself through their stories? The fortitude she'd felt began to wane, and doubt transformed back into the insidious whispers of criticism. The urgency to prepare for the competition collided with the need to find her voice. Alone in that cramped room, she grappled with a challenge greater than the canvas in front of her. It was the very essence of who she was becoming. Could she muster the courage to present her true self to not only the judges, but also the entire town, including her father, who remained resolute in his opposition? As the deadline loomed closer, Emily found herself at a crossroads. The question settled heavily over her. Would she allow the weight of expectation to dictate her destiny, stifling the promise that flowed through her veins? Or could she, like the women before her, redefine her legacy? With renewed intensity, Emily painted late into the night, fingers stained with the vibrant colors of newfound perspectives. Yet beneath the surface, an unsettling realization loomed. The time was approaching to face her fears head-on, the lurking specter of betrayal hovering close. The time had come for her to confront not only the canvas but the town that had been waiting for her triumph or failure. Would she emerge as the artist she yearned to become, or remain tied to the ghosts of her past? As dawn lightened the edges of her canvas, Emily prepared to unveil not just art, but herself, to a world that might not be ready for her truth. With the first rays of sunlight filtering through her window, Emily stepped back from the canvas, taking in the peace that had consumed her thoughts day and night. The mix of colors was chaotic yet beautiful, representing more than just art. It was an embodiment of her struggles, an outpouring of her newfound conviction. Today was not just about painting. It was a manifestation of her willingness to confront the world. The hours dragged as she went through her morning routine, each action imbued with the anticipation of what lay ahead. She felt the weight of her paint-stained clothes, a subtle reminder that her creative battle was far from over. Every stitch of fabric clung to her, both a comfort and a challenge, whispering tales of vulnerability. In the mirror, she searched her reflection for the strength she felt creeping into her veins. Could it be enough? Emily's phone buzzed, pulling her from her reverie. It was Sarah, her best friend since they were young girls. "Can we talk? I need to share something," the text read. Tension curled in Emily's stomach. She had expected to bask in her triumph today, not grapple with an unexpected conversation. Yet she also sensed an opportunity, a chance to weave another thread into her canvas of identity. Arriving at Sarah's home, Emily steeled herself. Sarah's tone on the phone hadn't sounded urgent, yet something in her gut nodded. They settled into an intimate living room filled with sunlight, but suddenly the air felt heavy. Emily took a deep breath. Perhaps coming here was a sign that she needed to see not just her growth, but the truths in her friendships as well. "I've been thinking a lot about our futures," Sarah began hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I need you to be real with me." Emily's pulse quickened. Her voice could either strengthen their bond or shatter it. As Sarah detailed her own fears about stepping into a future shaped by her own decisions, Emily noticed parallels with her own struggles. "Everyone sees us a certain way," Sarah continued. What if we don't fit the mold? Emily's heart raced. This was her moment to unravel the truth. You know, I'm entering the art competition, she began, testing her voice. It scares me because I want to be true to myself, not just what everyone else expects. She felt an exhilarating weight lift, a release of the fear she had neatly tucked away. Sarah's expression shifted as if a veil was being lifted. I always thought you were meant for something more, but what do we do with the expectations? The conversation morphed into a revealing dialogue, becoming two artists sketching their future on unseen canvases. They shared the familiar fear of disappointing their families, of being judged. But deep down, they both recognized a shared truth, that the definition of success was theirs to create, free of external shackles. As the conversation deepened, something remarkable happened. Emily's insecurities began to dissolve amid Sarah's encouragement. Here, in the heart of a critical conversation, the thread connecting them tightened. Perhaps they could support each other in breaking the mold set before them. Emily saw it. A powerful alliance, one where vulnerability transformed into strength. As they wrapped up their discussion, a spark ignited within Emily. This newfound resolve melded her journey with another, solidifying the act of being seen and heard. The weight of their collective struggles transformed into a driving force, pushing her closer to her true self. Maybe we don't fit the molds others see, Emily concluded, an awareness settling in her heart. But we can redefine what success means for us, Sarah nodded, a bright smile illuminating her previously troubled demeanor. Yet as they parted ways, Emily sensed an unsettling feeling creeping back. Today would mark the beginning of her journey, but lurking beneath was a deep-seated fear of rejection, particularly from her father. With the deadline looming and the weight of that connection to family still heavy upon her, Emily returned home, determined, yet anxious. The competition wasn't just about art. It was about her voice being heard, her identity being acknowledged. As she stood before her canvas, poised to add the final strokes, the question reverberated through her mind. Was the world truly ready for her unfiltered truth? Each brushstroke pulsed with uncertainty, each color splashing against the canvas a tentative commitment to her real self. Tomorrow the community would gather to witness her unveiling. The reality of exposure tightened around her like a noose. Emily found herself navigating an intricate waltz between artistic expression and familial obligation. What would her father's reaction be? Would she validate her own journey or slip into silence? She grasped her brush with newfound determination, ready to paint her truth, not just on the canvas, but for the world to see. The final stroke demanded her complete confidence, yet uncertainty lingered, a haunting echo of doubt. As she prepared to complete the painting, a thought ignited within her. The true unveiling wasn't just of art, it was of self. What would she be willing to risk in pursuit of authenticity? Tomorrow held the key to that discovery. Emily woke to the relentless whisper of anxiety weaving through her mind. The heaviness of impending exposure pressed down on her chest, making each breath feel weighted. She dressed slowly, her movements mechanical as thoughts spiraled around her father's anticipated reaction. Would he dismiss her work or worse, turn away from her entirely? The fear surged, threatening to overtake the fragile courage she had cultivated in moments shared with Sarah. Standing before the mirror, she searched for resolve amidst the storm. Each brush of mascara felt like a commitment to authenticity, a silent vow that today she would not hide. A pulse of defiance ignited within her. The art had always been more than colors on a canvas. It was her voice, her life. Could she trust herself to speak her truth, knowing that it may not be received as she hoped? The day unfolded with agonizing slowness. The hours ticked away like the dripping of a leaking faucet, teasing her anticipation while nudging her toward a cliff of vulnerability. Emily practiced her breathing, trying to lock in the conviction she had felt after her conversation with Sarah, grounding herself in the knowledge that this was her moment to embrace, not to flee from. Arriving at the venue, a gallery buzzed with the energy of attendees, laughter ringing through the air like electric current. Emily's heart raced as she stepped inside. Each face felt like a judgment, a potential catalyst for failure. She zeroed in on her artwork, the swirling growth of colors reflecting her internal struggle, fear intertwined with hope. As she approached her canvas, she noticed familiar faces from her childhood mingling, yet they looked distant, as if trapped in a haze of expectations. Her father stood off to the side, his arms crossed, an unreadable expression etched onto his face. The mere sight of him sent shivers of nostalgia paired with dread into her core. Would he see her, truly see her, or would his vision remain clouded by the assumptions he had carried for so long? With each passing second, the urge to withdraw intensified. She grabbed a glass of water to mask the tremor in her hands, watching a few other artists express their versions of vulnerability and authenticity. Each painting resonated with thoughts and revelations, creating a tapestry of shared experiences. Then the gallery owner approached, his enthusiastic demeanor glowing. "Emily, your piece is creating quite a buzz. People are intrigued." The compliment hung in the air, momentarily soothing the tumult within her. Yet lingering behind that warmth was a question. Was her truth enough to resonate with others? She glanced at her painting once more, taking in the energized chaos she had poured onto the canvas. It was unsettling yet beautiful, a truthful representation of her journey. "Are you ready?" The voice of the owner jolted her back to the present. "Ready," she replied, more to the universe than to him. Each step toward her artwork felt monumental, a march toward exposure that echoed in her chest. The crowd began to gather, hushed conversations circling around her work. Emily stood before her creation, heart pounding. She opened her mouth, words spilling out, fueled by urgency as she addressed the crowd. "This piece reflects my journey, my struggles, and my search for identity. It is a reflection of not just who I am, but who I'm becoming." As she spoke, every word stripped away layers of fear, revealing a core wrapped in fierce determination. For the first time, it felt as though she beheld herself through the lens of authenticity, a real artist with a narrative worth sharing. The sound of her father's voice broke through the haze, murmuring to a friend, "I don't know this." Her heart sank but steeled. No matter his perception, her path was hers alone. With the finality of her declaration, the moment settled in her bones. This unveiling encompassed more than just her artwork. It championed her right to exist fully and authentically. The energy pulsating in the gallery wrapped around her gently but firmly. Yet amid the applause now growing from the gathering crowd, she caught her father's eye. He stood rigid, the walls of his expectations seemingly tighter than ever. Would he step forward or retreat deeper into his silence? Moments stretched, each heartbeat echoing in her ears. The next chapter of her story loomed ahead, intertwining appreciation and fear. Time to confront the truth, she thought, battling the doubt swirling in her mind, teetering on the edge of vulnerability once more. Would today be another brush with disbelief or the start of something entirely new? Emily stood in the gallery, the applause reverberating like a wave crashing over her. Yet she felt strangely untethered, floating between triumph and trepidation. The faces of the attendees blurred together, their expressions inscrutable. She had shared her truth, and now she was exposed not just through her art, but in the vulnerability she had dared to reveal. Yet, her father's lingering disapproval loomed larger than any cheer. As she scanned the crowd, Emily noticed Sarah moving closer, her supportive gaze piercing the dense atmosphere. Sarah's smile was infectious, energizing, a reminder of the bond they'd forged in creativity. "You did it!" Sarah exclaimed, practically radiating pride. "I spoke my truth, but what if it's not enough?" Emily replied. The weight of her father's initial dismissal hung like a dark cloud, threatening to overshadow any recognition of her accomplishment. "Your truth is enough," Sarah insisted, "and you need to let it resonate with you first. This is just the beginning." Despite the conviction in Sarah's voice, doubt began to gnaw at her. What if her journey was in conflict with what her father wanted for her? In the silence that followed, she felt the familiar tug-of-war within herself. Would she continue to seek validation from others, or could she cultivate her self-worth independent of external approval? By confronting her fears, Emily had uncovered a latent strength. But would that be resilient enough to withstand the forces that were yet to come? "Excuse me, I need to step outside for a moment," she said, needing air to clear the tangles of emotions that started to suffocate her. Wandering onto a small balcony, she took a deep breath. The cool night enveloped her, and she leaned against the railing, hoping to shake off the doubts. In the distance, stars decorated the sky like scattered brush strokes on a canvas. They stirred something within her, the realization that just as no two stars are alike, neither were people, nor their stories. Each person walked their path, often overshadowed by others' expectations. Why had she held on to the belief that her father's view of success was the only valid one? Why had she kept herself shackled to someone else's definition of worth? As she pondered, a sudden rush of clarity surged through her. The courage she had mustered wasn't solely for the gallery. It was for the life she was ready to embrace. Emily understood now that this was not just about one evening or one canvas. It was about every day moving forward. Each brushstroke, every spoken word was a step toward owning her narrative, a shift from seeking approval to self-acceptance. With a newfound purpose, she returned inside, ready to face not only the crowd but also her father's scrutinizing eyes. It was time for her to reclaim her narrative, not with bitterness but with an invitation for understanding. She would no longer tiptoe around his perception, but instead offer him the grace to see her journey as a tapestry of her own making. As she stepped back into the gallery, the applause began to fade, and Emily took her place amidst the crowd. She approached her father, heart pounding, battling a mix of fear and resolve. Would acknowledging her truth bridge the gap between them, or would it deepen the divide? The moment of confrontation loomed, electric with possibility. "Dad," she began, her voice steady but vulnerable. "Can we talk?" The weight of her words hung heavily in the air as she prepared for whatever came next. Would he step forward into the light, or would he retreat back into the shadows of his expectations? Emily felt the air thicken around her, laden with anticipation as she stood inhaling the faint scent of paint, mixed with the mustiness of the old gallery walls. Her father's eyes, clouded with a mix of confusion and disappointment, bore down on her. She had expected this moment to either liberate her or shatter her resolve, but it seemed to do both simultaneously. "Emily," he said, his voice a low rumble, heavy with restrained emotion. "I think you need to understand what you've done here." Each word seemed to pull her further into a discussion she had been dreading. His tone was methodical, as if laying out facts to counter her emotional swell. "What I've done is express myself, Dad. Art has always been my way of doing that." She felt a spark of defiance ignite within her, but it flickered under the scrutiny of his gaze. "You think this is about art? It's about expectations, about where you're heading in life." His disappointment hung like a weight between them, pressing down on her aspirations. Emily felt anger flare in her chest, but it was interlaced with profound sadness. Why did he refuse to see the value in her expression, in her journey? "Why can't you support me for once?" Her voice cracked slightly, a mixture of desperation and rejection swirling in her gut. "Art is not just a hobby to be put aside for a practical future. It's part of who I am." "Who you are," he echoed, shaking his head slowly. "You need to be realistic. Is this really going to pay the bills? Are you going to make a living from this?" The dismissal stung, settled in the pit of her stomach, but the glimmer of clarity she had felt earlier began to rise once more. "It's not just about financial stability, Dad. It's about worth, about living my truth, not just yours." The reminder of what she had come to realize steeled her resolve. Every word she spoke felt like a brushstroke defining her narrative, painting a future where she was more than her father's daughter. She was an artist, a creator. He opened his mouth to respond, but she raised her hand, desperate to finish this conversation. "I want to be successful, yes, but in my terms. I want to create, to share, to have my experiences reflected in the world. You may not see value in this, but I do." There was a silence, heavy and potent, where the air crackled with unresolved tension. She was not just battling her father's expectations, she was battling years of internalized fear and doubt that had dictated her perception of success. "What if I fail?" she whispered, barely audible but loud in the quiet of her heart. The thought resonated painfully, yet she understood now that failure, if it came, would be her own. A necessary stepping stone on her path to authenticity. "Life is a risk, Dad. If I don't try, I'll never know. And if pursuing this makes me happy, isn't that enough?" His expression softened, and for a brief moment, she saw the faint glimmer of realization flickering in his eyes. It was a silent acknowledgement that love could exist alongside conflict, and perhaps understanding could grow from this encounter. As the air lightened, Emily felt a wave of nervous energy surge through her. She was ready to listen, to bridge the divide with transparency instead of retreat. The flickering flame of hope rekindled. "Can we start from here?" she asked, her resolve wrapping around her like a shield. The corners of his mouth twitched, betraying a fight against the walls he had built. Before he answered, however, the gallery door swung open, drawing attention away from their moment. In walked an old acquaintance of Emily's, a former instructor she had looked up to, unmistakably vibrant, filled with life. Instantly, Emily's hesitation formed a question at the back of her mind. "Emily!" her instructor exclaimed, enthusiasm evident in her voice. "I heard about your exhibit. We need to talk. There's something exciting I've been wanting to discuss with you." Her heart raced, intrigued but anxious. The moment with her dad had opened a door, but this new interruption sent a jolt of uncertainty through her. What did it mean for her journey? "Just a moment," she said, glancing at her father, searching for confirmation that this conversation would continue. Would she have the courage to dive deeper into this new opportunity, even amid uncertainty with her father? The night held an air of impending change. Was she ready to embrace it? Emily turned her attention back to her former instructor, the energy buzzing around her like electric currents. Memories of late-night critiques and artistic breakthroughs flooded her mind, but they only heightened the anxiety that tinged her excitement. "What's this exciting thing you want to discuss?" she asked, her voice a curious blend of eagerness and caution, the undercurrent of the recent confrontation with her father still rippling through her. Her instructor's eyes sparkled as she leaned closer. "I'm putting together a collaborative exhibition featuring emerging artists, and I think your work would fit perfectly. I've been following your journey, and I want you to be a part of it." Emily felt a rush of exhilaration mixed with dread. The thought of being showcased alongside other artists ignited a blaze within her spirit. Yet the doubts from her earlier conversation with her father clawed at her, whispering insidiously in her ear. Was she really ready for this? Could she stand tall in the spotlight, or would she crumble under the weight of others' expectations, just as she felt she had begun to with her father? "Collaborative?" she asked, testing the waters. "What if my work doesn't align with what others do?" Her instructor smiled, the confidence doubling as reassurance. "That's precisely the point. Each artist brings their unique voice. It creates a tapestry of perspective. Plus, it's a chance to grow and challenge your creativity, expand your network." Emily's heart raced. The possible connections, the opportunities, the validation. It all felt intoxicating, but another thought simmered beneath the immediate thrill. Would sharing her work mean confronting her fears of inadequacy? Would she be strong enough to face her father with her decision to pursue this path? The joyful chatter from the gallery filled the silence as she pondered her next steps. She scanned the room, interacting with familiar faces while noting how art bounced off those gallery walls, expressions resonating as vibrant as the paintings themselves. "Can I think about it?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper, but the determination behind the words solidified. "I just need to navigate some things on my end." "Of course. Take your time," her instructor replied. "But I hope you seriously consider it. I believe in what you can create." Once her former mentor had stepped away, Emily looked back at her father, who stood listening to an older woman speak nearby. In that moment, she realized the bold choice ahead of her would also require confronting her insecurities head-on. She could no longer let her father's fears dictate her path. What would it take to transform her experience of this moment into something transformative? Emily sought resolve amongst the swirling emotions, understanding that she needed to make a decision that would not only define her art, but tether her self-worth to her aspirations, not her father's expectations. As the rhythm of her thoughts quickened, a new resolve cooled the heat in her heart. Could she combine the potential of this exhibition with the understanding that her art, her expression, was indeed both valid and necessary? She turned and spotted her father, his well-worn face creasing slightly as he laughed at something the woman said. Hurt and pride intermingled in Emily's chest, drawing a breath away from her lungs. It could be time to share the exhibition proposal, to cross that bridge together. But uncertainty lingered in the back of her mind. What would she face if she chose this path? Could she convince him that her journey was worthy of respect? The moment felt pivotal, and the stakes were rising within her, a crossroads where conflict and creation intertwined. Just then, her father's laughter echoed across the room, an inviting sound that softened the distance. One step forward felt monumental. What lay ahead could either strengthen their bond or forge new conflicts. As she took a deep breath, she felt the embers of courage flicker within her. Would she summon the strength to bring her vision to light? The decision to embrace this opportunity was looming, but would she have the guts to face the consequences? The gallery seemed to pulse with life, a living canvas full of potential. It was up to her to decide how her story would unfold. Would she emerge embraced by the art world, or would she retreat, confined by lingering fears? With her heart pounding, she stabilized her thoughts. She couldn't waver now, not after everything she had fought to understand about herself. As she steeled herself, Emily felt one question rise above the storm swirling within. Could she finally break free and claim a future that was entirely her own? Emily inhaled sharply, the rich scent of oil paint mingling with the crispness of fresh canvases weighing heavily in the air. Her gaze remained fixed on her father, who continued his relaxed conversation, seemingly oblivious to the turmoil stirring within her. Inexplicably, that light-hearted laughter began twisting into a sharp reminder of her unresolved fears. As she surveyed the gathering, she felt the dichotomy of her existence. On one hand, there was the exhilarating promise of the collaborative exhibition, her foot poised, ready to step into a world where her voice could echo among peers who shared her passion. On the other, looming doubts and the shadows of her father's disapproval wrapped themselves around her like chains. Determining her next move felt like navigating a minefield. Emily brushed her fingers against the edge of a nearby painting, the textured surface grounding her momentarily. The vibrant colors sang the story of agency and creativity, unlike the strict confines into which her father had boxed her aspirations. For too long she had weathered his incessant warnings and protective instincts, yet she was at a tipping point, determined to push against the constraints of his expectations. She turned her back on her father's laughter, choosing to confront herself instead. What did she want? The question pulsed louder now. This exhibition represented more than art. It was the bridge to reclaiming her identity. To be vulnerable, to share her work, meant opening up a dialogue with herself, dismantling the stronghold of parental anxiety that had thwarted her dreams. With every sketch she had poured her heart into during sleepless nights, every brushstroke in which her emotions intertwined, she had established an echo of who she wanted to become. Relenting to fear would only diminish that. Her mind raced through conversations she had avoided, rehearsing what she might say to her father. "Dad, I'm ready to pursue this path into the art world." The words seemed powerful, yet terrifying, a call to arms. She needed to invite him into this journey. Suddenly, she envisioned a world where her art wasn't branded as some fleeting hobby, but was lauded for its intrinsic worth. The worth she had always believed it held. The very act of participating in the exhibition could ignite a transformation, allowing her father to see her not just as his daughter but as an artist in her own right. Just then, her former instructor reappeared, sensing the shifting tides in Emily's demeanor. "You look inspired," she noted. "I think I am," Emily replied, mounting a flicker of confidence. I'm ready to embrace this. I think I need to talk to my father about it. Good, her instructor said, a smile creeping across her face. This is about your journey. Don't forget that. Emily felt a rush of adrenaline. The conversation with her father would not merely be about the exhibition, it would be a defining moment in her life. She could stand up for her vision, taking a leap into an uncharted landscape of self-belief. But that leap would require careful navigation, one that demanded vulnerability. As she gathered herself to head toward her father, doubt slithered back in, whispering that this could end poorly. What if he dismissed her dreams as he had so many times before? What if he could never see her as anything but the careful daughter he had raised? Yet amidst the flurry of thoughts, a clearer voice emerged. She wasn't asking for permission. She was offering him partnership in this journey. A newfound resolve surged within her, imbuing her with a potent mix of fear and determination. Her heart raced as she drew closer, his bemused expression finally arresting her thoughts. This was the moment that could redefine everything. Perhaps this was the start of breaking not just the chains of fear, but also the walls between them. Taking another deep breath, she readied herself. The vulnerability would be frightening. The risks were undeniable. But confronting this fear was the only path to growth. Her truth needed to be voiced. As she approached, a single thought anchored her. It was time to invite him into her world for better or worse. Would he hear her out, or would he resist? The tension hung heavy, and with her next words, she would either forge a deeper connection or face the stark reality of understanding that still lay between them. What awaited her as she stepped into this confrontation? Emily took another steadying breath, feeling the weight of every moment leading up to this confrontation. It was as if time slowed, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last, urging her to speak, to seize her moment. As she stepped into her father's peripheral vision, his laughter faded, replaced by curious eyes that approached her like two searchlights, ready to uncover something she had kept buried for far too long. "Dad," she began, her voice trembling but resolute. "Can we talk?" The shift in tone caught him off guard. He tilted his head slightly, a flicker of concern replacing his previous joviality. "Sure, Emily. What's on your mind?" She felt the stakes rise, the pulse of her heartbeat synchronizing with the urgency in her voice. "It's about the exhibition. I've been working on my art, really working, and I want to participate." His brow furrowed, the immediate intensity of his reaction striking her like a thunderbolt. "Emily, I thought we discussed this. Art isn't a reliable career choice. You have to think about your future." The familiar rhetoric coiled around her, but this time she was equipped with something stronger than fear. "It is my future, Dad. I know you worry about me, but I need to explore this side of myself. This isn't just a phase. It's who I am." Caught in the visceral tension, Emily stared into her father's eyes, searching for any sign of understanding, any glimmer of acceptance. But his expression remained fixed, a storm cloud hovering just above. The air between them hummed with unresolved conflict, a chasm widening with each passing second. "Since when has art defined you?" he challenged, crossing his arms as if to shield himself from her words. "You've always been sensible. This isn't you." A wave of frustration surged through Emily, hot and invasive. Her thoughts churned, sifting through all the years spent striving to meet his expectations. "This is me, Dad. I've spent years trying to fit into your mold, but it's time I create my own." She felt an empowering rush at her declaration, each word shaping a new reality, a declaration of her autonomy. She was no longer just the daughter yearning for acceptance. She was an artist demanding recognition, a perspective he had never allowed her to own. "But what if it doesn't go well? What if you fail?" he asked, his voice laced with genuine concern. "Failing is a part of life, and not trying is far worse," she countered, her resolve firming. This was about more than just art. It was about burgeoning independence, about dispelling the shadows that had dictated her choices for too long. Their exchange crackled with raw emotion, each word a brushstroke on a canvas that had been blank for far too long. Within her, emotions battled, the remnants of doubt versus the exhilarating prospect of self-definition. Dad, I need you to see this for what it truly is. It's not just art to me. It's the embodiment of everything I've kept inside, she urged, desperate for him to apprehend the urgent force propelling her forward. Silence enveloped them, a haze of tension thickening the air. Doubts crept in again, whispering that she might have pushed too far. She realized then that this moment of confrontation was also about his acceptance of her, but it placed her at a precipice she had never dared to stand on before. Empathy flickered behind her father's eyes once more, battling the protective instincts that molded his initial response. Would he step back or step forward? Would he recognize her as an artist, even if it meant stepping out of the safety of his shadow? The moment extended, heavy with possibility, a crossroads of past expectations and future aspirations. Could he open that door for her, or would he choose to close it, reinforcing the very barriers she sought to dismantle? As she awaited his answer, that familiar urgency morphed into a palpable tension, setting the stage for a revelation that could reshape their relationship forever. Would this conversation bring them closer together, or would it drive them further apart? Emily felt the urgency pulse in her veins as silence enveloped them, thick like fog. Her father's expression was a mix of tension and concern, emotions battling behind his guarded gaze. She had articulated her truth, but would he comprehend the depths of her aspirations? Finally, breaking the charged atmosphere, her father took a breath that seemed to linger before his words came out. I worry about you, Emily. We have dreams for our children, and art. It just seems so precarious. The fierce determination she felt began to coalesce within her like a vibrant hue on her canvas. Dad, I appreciate your concern, but I need to pursue my dreams, even if they seem tenuous to you. I cannot define my worth through someone else's expectations anymore. His eyes narrowed, processing her insistence. Emily felt as if she teetered on the brink of a cliff, a precarious balance between hope and despair. She had fought for this moment, and must now brace for whatever came next. Are you really ready to risk everything on a gamble? He pressed, voice firm yet worn. Emily straightened her posture, every word imbued with conviction. Art is not a gamble to me. It's my lifeblood. It's the voice I've struggled for too long to find. If I don't take this leap, I could forever wonder what could have been. I owe it to myself to try. The weight of her declaration seemed to hang in the air, and for a brief moment time became suspended between them. Emily could hear distant chatter from the gallery, laughter floating through the atmosphere like confetti celebrating her transformation. She stood resolutely before her father. This was not a confrontation to incite anger, but an invitation to embrace her journey together. Finally, her father softened. Okay, I understand you think it's important. But doubt creased his brow. Will you promise me you'll have a backup plan? It wasn't the wholehearted acceptance she craved, but the acknowledgement of her feelings felt monumental. I will create my path even if it diverges from what you envisioned. The gentle firmness in her tone spoke to the reality she had just birthed, like the final stroke on her canvas, her destiny in her hands. Then I want you to know, I will always support you, just make sure you have options. That was the victory that painted relief through Emily's veins. It was a small concession, perhaps, but it meant he was beginning to see her as the artist she always intended to be, not just as his daughter bound by his dreams. Thank you, she whispered, overwhelmed by a dawning sense of resilience blossoming within her. The moment felt as if the canvas of her life had shifted, colors melding into something richer and more vibrant. As she stepped away, leaving the heaviness of doubt and the chains of expectation behind, the gallery hummed with renewed energy around her. She turned to find Sarah, who had been observing, a knowing smile on her face. Well? Sarah prompted, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Emily nodded. I think I will pursue the exhibition. It's time to move forward. The relief of her choice washed over her, cleansing the residual fears. This was it, the culmination of years spent battling against the tide of expectation, flowing instead toward the advent of her own aspirations. Later, as she stood back and admired her artwork again, Emily felt invigorated, deeply proud of how far she had come. She had transformed from a girl drowned in doubts to a young woman poised for greatness, equipped not only with her paintbrush, but with the awareness of her worth. When she faced the crowd again, delivering her story with a newfound grace and authenticity, a thought fluttered in her mind. She was not just her father's daughter or an artist whose journey was fraught with struggle. She was a powerful voice that would inspire others. Just as the evening began to wind down, an art critic approached her, intrigued by the piece. "Your work captures an essence of longing and intensity that resonates deeply," he mused, a warm smile illuminating his face. "I'd love to discuss a feature on your journey in our upcoming publication." Emily's heart soared. Recognition was no longer something she chased. It was now a reflection of self-acceptance, a celebration of bravery. The world was finally welcoming her into its embrace. As the final applause echoed in the gallery, Emily knew this was just the beginning. She had conquered more than just art. She had achieved self-discovery. By reclaiming her narrative, she had given herself permission to thrive beyond societal limitations. Her path would forever be dictated by her own dreams, painted fearlessly on the vast canvas of her life. Now was the moment of emergence. She had proved to herself that she could rise above the shadows, forge her destiny, and inspire others by living authentically. This was her story. It had transformed through fights, fears, artistry, and triumph. The journey ahead belonged to her, vibrant and unyielding. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share.